Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the software testing enthusiasts around the world. We are now ready for our next session. That would be on autonomous testing, how to introduce testing bot to boost your efficiency and speed. So thank you again for tuning on with us and continuing to support us with this program. We have with us Marcel Veselka, right? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. So, Marcel, you have spent all your career actually in software testing, and I see that you have a lot of interesting skill set as such. So, you started your career with a position of test analyst before moving into test management. You've founded quite some testing community and companies around there. So I see that there is a testing community called Protest. Interesting name actually for a testing community. And you founded as well a software startup, a software company startup Whoopee.io that is specialized in autonomous testing. And you have special interest in modern testing approach, including the trendy topics like automation testing, DevOps testing, Scrum, AI, ML, and autonomous testing. So all the buzzword actually for parts of your skill set. That's impressive.
Exactly.
So I hope that you have a great session with our audience, and I'll leave the floor to you for your talk on how to introduce testing bot to boost your efficiency and speed. And we'll take some questions at the end.
Cool.
So the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you very much. And now I will try to share my screen and start my talk. Okay, let's see. Not there yet. Now, could you just confirm that you can see my screen? Because now I'm becoming a bit blind because of...
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes.
Perfect. So let me first start with something what I'm not very happy about, and that's something about testing. You know, I am trying to follow all the trends, all the reports, all the ideas out there on the market. And I found one interesting result, which is keep repeating couple of years, maybe already 4 or 5 years. And people or our colleagues in IT are complaining about testing. And they are saying in that report that testing is number one reason for IT delivery delays. And being in software testing for 20 years, this is kind of strange, maybe pretty painful statement. And I was always fighting to get some better testing. And I was always searching for some ideas how we could improve what we do and what we love, I would say. And maybe that's why you are also here on this conference. But there is a lot of other statement I could hear as I'm spending a lot of time in software testing. Some people complain that testing is expensive. Some people complain about the testing that's pretty hard. Sometimes people are saying that it's boring or slow. But for me, testing was always fun. And I believe we could make the testing even better, and we could prove that it could be done better. But before that, talking about the testing, let me properly introduce myself, and let's move on with the topic. So my name is Marcel Veselka. I am founder of a couple of different initiatives, ideas, and companies. One is called Tesena. I founded 10 years ago, and now with around 100 testers, we are helping other customers to do the better testing. And this year, I decided to start my new journey and adventure, and I established new company focused on innovation in testing, and we decided that we will build autonomous testing tool or autonomous testing platform, if you wish, with name Whoopee. Today, I would like to talk about, especially about the bots, but I'll start with very quick introduction, how we end up with that idea, pushing it further. Then I will explain autonomous testing, because this is one of the, I would say, idea which basically is built on top of the bot or bots. And then I will share some more ideas you could bring to improve your testing, because as I mentioned on previous slides, some people are skeptical about testing, and I believe we could innovate it and push it further. So let me start first with some history or with some memories from the past. The journey to better testing is pretty long, and we always believe that nowadays that's perfect and we already found it. I don't know whether you remember, but a couple of years ago we started with manual testing. That was not my age, or that era was before I actually started a testing career. I started my testing career in 2004, so this was something I just read from the books and maybe hear from other colleagues who have more experience. Then a couple of years ago, maybe it's pretty old idea. I don't want to say how many years it is. We introduced test automation, and we believe this is the thing, that this will help us. We will not need to do any manual activities in testing, and that will be the silver bullet for anything what we need to solve in testing. Later, someone introduced another idea, because we felt like we have all these AI, machine learning, and everything is ready. So we could start with something which was called, or which is still called, autonomous testing. So this is actually the last era we are living, and the question is whether this is the last, or what will be the next. But I would like to focus on that autonomous testing, because I believe that's the topic where the lot is happening nowadays. Of course, all the journey was supported by a lot of vendors, a lot of tools, a lot of open source initiatives and teams or individuals building some new ideas to make this test automation happen. And nowadays, people are focused on autonomous testing. So what's that autonomous testing about, or what's the idea about? And if you research on the internet, you might find a couple of different sources, but basically most of them are inspired by automotive industry or car industry, and designing or defining it as a 6 level of autonomy. And definition for the autonomous testing is that basically computers hand over full control of testing process, and human do not need to be involved at all. This sounds kind of theoretical, so I try to make it a bit more practical. And this slide I used also last year here on the conference. So those who already attended last year, they might remember that. But I really fall in love with the slide, so I decided to keep the slide for this talk as well. So this is my definition of autonomous testing. When we are talking about manual testing, we need to do all the topics manually. When we introduce some automation, that might be some kind of hoover, but we still need to do a lot of stuff manually. And autonomous testing is that we basically trying to reduce all the human efforts, not only in test execution. If you are talking about testing, that's kind of maybe confusing, because that's about the cleaning, and now I'm talking about testing. So when we are talking about testing and autonomous testing, we are focused to reduce all our efforts, not only in test execution, but also in preparation, in test analysis, in test design, in test building, but also later in maintenance, and also handling results. To make it more scientific, I could also bring up another slide which is focused on that levels. And similarly, as I explained it in on that first slide about autonomous testing, these levels are 6, starting from 0, where we consider autonomous testing as a no automation at all, which is basically manual testing at each stage or each process within the testing approach. And we are slightly starting introducing some automation and reducing or removing human efforts. And this could go on, and we end up with 0 human efforts. I don't know whether this is feasible, but this is direction we are going. I don't know whether the no effort means 0 effort or very little effort, but our goal is to reduce human intervention. Of course, there is a lot of questions, and I believe you will ask me in a chat how this could happen and how we could provide any input, feedback, and so on. And that some people might complain that this is a human task to be sure or to check whether the system works. But I believe automation already prove their position in testing. I believe that test automation is valuable for us, and we know that it's not good for all the activities. But the idea of autonomous testing is to bring that automation even into areas where I would say we didn't find a way how to apply that. And it might sound a bit crazy, but there are a couple of other people and companies crazy about the idea, not only me. And so that's why I decided to show you some other slides about that autonomous testing. And this is a hype cycle, which is basically reported by Gartner, which they introduced in 2020 or published in 2020. And that's hype cycle for Agile and DevOps. And autonomous testing is on the list. So Gartner thinks that if you do or if you practice Agile and DevOps, one of the idea or one of the topic you should deal with is autonomous testing. And they also predict that we will reach the production readiness, or as they call it, plateau of productivity, in 5 to 10 years. And this was 3 years ago. Last year, they published a new report with the new predictions. And they move it more right, which means the idea is getting more and more mature. And the prediction was that we will be ready with that in 2 to 5 years. So it's coming closer and closer to us. They also predict that this will become 1/3 of our testing approach in the previous reports, and they predict that it will be very soon. If you would be interested in some sources of the information, I could share it later. But we understand that the next era of testing is autonomous testing. We understand that automation didn't replace the manual testing. The question is what will happen now? Are we living 3 eras together, or it will be somehow combined, or autonomous and automation will become one? There's a lot of questions around that. But this talk is not about searching for the best combination of these practices. I think it will develop as it developed as the ratio between automation and manual testing developed a couple of last years. But I would like to now talk about the way how we could implement this approach. And I believe there are 2 options or 2 directions we could go. And maybe at the end it'll merge into one, but I believe we could keep improving our existing test automation. And I will share some ideas how we could improve our test automation to become more autonomous. And the second, which is my key point for today, is to introduce testing bots, because this might replace a lot of manual activities nowadays we have in test automation. Of course, we need to support that with very clever algorithms. It's not so simple task, but already nowadays we have a couple of bots which helping us not only in testing but in entire SDLC, as we would say, or in development process. I was talking about Gartner, but there are some other companies also working on the analysis and researching the market and trying to define or predict the trends. Another company mentioning something which is very related to autonomous testing is Forrester. Forrester is other company, and they published pretty interesting article, or I think it was blog post about Turing bots. And they explain how nowadays we are using these Turing bots for our daily tasks. And if you are using tools like GitHub, you might already spot such bots which are able nowadays reply to your reported issues. There are some bots analyzing your code and reporting some security risks or bugs. There are some bots who deal with your dependencies, and if there is some new package released, it reports you the change, or even sending you the pull request to update your code. So these bots are already in development, and I believe it's coming into testing as well. So I decide that for the purpose of this presentation, I will define my software testing bot as a term, because that's not mine. It's basically out there and people talking about it. I'll show you some more data from other researchers on the next slides. So let's agree that for our purposes, software testing bot is AI-powered software that can help us to test our application. And I just want to prove that this is not the crazy idea by Marcel, but it's the idea also other people talk about or think about. And I will return back to another report. This is actually the same report I mentioned at the beginning. And GitLab asked their users, whether they are using or they are planning to use some AI and machine learning in testing. And I decided that the first interesting answer is that 65% of the team says, yes, we are using it, or we will be definitely using it in 3 years. What I decided that I will bring here also top 3 workflows, which is kind of strange word for me, but that's 3 different ideas people think about, that this might be the right candidates to apply this AI and machine learning. First one is that the quality of code might be checked by AI and machine learning. And to be honest, I'm using this when I'm reviewing some code. I am using some generative models to give me some suggestions how I could improve the code for myself and also for other colleagues when I'm running some pull requests. Of course, you need to clean it up. Not all the suggestions are perfect, so you need to have some your own expertise, but it could give you some tips what could be improved. And sometimes I need to admit that it brings up the topics I cannot spot so easily. Second is that the people expect that they will use bots for testing, which is the topic of my talk. And third one is that they will use that AI machine learning for code review, as I already mentioned. So for the purpose of this talk, I'm focusing on the bots. So this is something people believe is useful and will focus on and will build their own or find some bots out there. But how to build such a bot? It sounds fancy, but what do we need to do to implement some bot into our daily testing practice? I believe in any testing, we need to do some interaction and some validation or assertions, as we call it in test automation. And the question is autonomous testing so simple? Interaction and validation? And I think yes, but the tricky part of it is to specifically focus on the problem you are trying to test or on the topic you are focused on. So it will be probably different implementation when you are running some UI testing than if you need to test API or test some files or databases or networks, or you could give your own type of functionality or the type of system under test you need to test. And then we need to also figure out how to test or how to validate. So we need to interact first. So if we test database, we need to probably fetch the data. So we need to have some driver to fetch data, or we need to have some driver to interact with UI if we test web app like Selenium or Playwright, or we need to have some other tool to request the API. And then we need to have something for how to validate the results. And this is still a bit theoretical. So I decided that I will bring it even further into more detail and give you some specific example. And for that, I decided I will use my own product or our own product we are building or working on. And I will go very quickly through that just to show you how the bot could work or what are the principles you need to think about. And to do so, we will test web app application. So the interaction will be with the app. And we will use visual validation to automate the assets. And you might see on the screen that I believe a lot could be spot just by looking at the UI. So for this demo, I'll use this application, which is simple e-commerce app to purchase some bot. And to test that, we could maybe say, okay, let's have a simple 6 regression test to validate that the application after new version is not broken. So first test case could be, I will click on the logo and I will check that I'm still on the home page. Second one might be that I will click on the home button or menu item. Then I could click on the gallery, contact page, some login screen, and so on. So this might be our 6 very simple test cases, but visually this could be pretty broken, and this could help us to validate that all the pages are available, or that checkout is available, and user could navigate through the page. So this is extremely simplified example just to show how the bot could work. But in order to implement such a interaction with the app, I need to be able to distinguish what are the menu options, what are the buttons, what I could click on, what are the links, what are the filling elements, and so on. So when I am building bot for UI, I need to find a way how to generalize the interaction with the app. It could be similar for mobile apps, it could be similar for desktop apps, but for that you need to have something which could help you to do so. For that, we are using Playwright as a driver, as a tool to implement this generic logic. And we build some map. To do so, our bot crawl the application and generate the entire map. And based on that, we are able to generate the test cases. That example is pretty simplified. The application might be much bigger. This is a bit bigger model from our testing environment, but real applications might be even bigger. I was talking about visual validation, or the way how to assert the application. There are, of course, a couple of things what you could do automatically, easily, like collecting the status codes, failed JavaScripts, maybe the speed of loading the page. And from that, you could collect some quality metrics or signals, whether the application is correct or not. But in our case, we decided to go in different way, and we decided that we will use visual validation. And this visual validation is beautiful idea for teams who are pretty advanced in test automation, because a lot of teams nowadays have fully automated regression tests. They deliver their new versions a couple of times a day. And when they do so, they have not enough time to do visual checks. So what might happen when you use your traditional testing or traditional test automation using Selenium, Playwright, Cypress, or any other tool, which counts on the locators, that this type of application is okay, and you could easily execute your functional test by testing the checkout. But if the application is visually broken, your automation still works. And for those teams who are counting on that automated functional tests, they could easily automatically deploy a new version, even with this type of bugs. And I believe that's not a good approach. And you could reintroduce your exploratory testing. You might collect the screenshots and so on. So we basically use the same approach for our validation by the bot, because it could be easily automated. But as I said, you could use any other signals like status codes or JavaScript failures, which might be the reasons for similar bugs. Similarly, it could be done for validating some mandatory fields, but that's a different story. I don't want to spend too much time on this. That's more about benefits of visual testing. So as I said, we are building some bot which uses this visual validation. And in order to run the tests, we have a simple UI where you provide your link to application, then you build a model, and then you could run your test cases. Still, it's a lot of slides and words, so I decided that I will show you how to execute your testing. And to do so, you need to press the project need to be prepared, the bot need to be trained, and once you have it, you only click on the run test button and then execute your scenarios. What bot does is that it goes into our database and pick up a couple of test cases based on the model and execute them. The ideal scenario is that you just see the pie chart, and based on that, you decide that all is okay and you are releasing. But I think this is kind of naive expectation, especially based on the discussion from our customers. So what typically people do still, and that's, I'm a bit sorry that it's not still the autonomous approach, but people are used to going to the details of tests and like to see the results. So in this case, I execute 10 test cases, 8 passed, but there are some where there are some issues. In this case, the comparison of screens is okay, but in case the bot finds some difference, that is reported like this. Of course, this might be bug, this might be the behavior. In our case, this is behavior. So we have some approach how to cope with that. So this is just example. You could build very similar bot for your cases on API level, on mobile apps, on web apps. It really depends what you test. Then you need to, of course, adjust the approach. But this is the way how you could build a bot. So, but I believe there might be some other options how we could bring more autonomy into our test automation, because the better automation, the closer you are into autonomy. And as I said, autonomous testing is not only about improving test execution. Autonomous testing is thinking about all areas of testing, from test design and analysis, build, planning, and also result assessment. And we are searching how to automate all these things. And if you saw that the idea of bot, it's basically about generating all the test cases, even selecting the test cases, executing them, and getting the result. We know that there is still some maintenance at the end because you need to go through that picture gallery, but we believe this is the way how people could improve their lives by coding less and getting more results. And these algorithms and these ideas will be advanced in the future, so it will be much better than we could imagine now. But as I said, other approach could be that we come back to our test automation and start improving that ideas or improving what we already have there. And I decided that I will share with you not only the idea of bot, but other topics which you could bring into your automation. And we actually also using these to improve the bot approach. One of the topic, and I also providing some list of potential tools you could play with and learn from these tools. So on the right side, you could always find some tips where to find that algorithm if you want to explore that. So first one is predictive test selection. Nowadays, it's not very efficient to select test cases manually, especially when we know how the users behave in production, when we know what code changes are coming into our new version, and so on. We could automatically generate order of test cases. And these test cases might be ordered based on the probability of failure. So that's the predictive test selection. Instead of picking up specific test cases manually or tagging them or prioritizing them, we always trying to understand what the change is coming into the software and ordering the test cases and running that, which are mostly fallible as a first and which we expect will pass at the end. And you could see that a couple of tools already providing such a feature. So if you are interested to learn how it works, these three are pretty interesting, at least for me. Second idea, which would help us, is that nowadays, especially a couple of last months, we could generate a lot of scripts, a lot of tests in very intelligent way. I'm using GitHub Copilot for more than 1 year, and I have to admit that it increased twice my speed of coding. Of course, sometimes you need to slow down and rethink the ideas, because sometimes it generates pretty messy code, but it's brilliant. If people criticize that it's not precise or it generates some bugs, I think that's incorrect expectation. It's a tool to help us, not replace us. And if this is the assumption or expectation from the tooling, this is brilliant. It helps me a lot. Of course, I need to always use my intelligence, otherwise this wouldn't help me. There are also some other tools, like we all know about ChatGPT or there is very nice tool called Autonomic, which is used for transforming Excel based test cases into the code.
Right. We might need to just have one sentences on each.
I don't know who is
yeah.
talking to me.
Yeah, sorry, that's Slovenish. So we might need to have one sentences for each just line of ideas that you have, so that we can have also some time to take some questions.
Okay, I thought I have time until 5.
No, that's so just few minutes more on the
So how
ideas,
many
and then we
minutes
take.
do I have? Because I could speed it up, but I thought I have enough time.
Let's give it to 2 minutes for the rest of the ideas, and then we take the questions.
Okay, I didn't know that I have less than 1 hour. So anyhow, I'll speed up. So self-healing is the other idea where you could easily generate the locators. Then, as I was talking about the bots and autonomous navigation, there are also a couple of tools which could be used for the learning and inspiration. Then we have some more ideas like image-based recognition. So instead of using the locators, we could use images. Of course, the visual validation I was talking about for my example, there are a couple of tools you could play with. Even some of them are open source. Then another pretty interesting idea when you are using page object model is generating this page object model on the fly. Actually, I didn't find any tool. So if you are interested, you could follow this guy, and he has a GitHub repository, I think, for with the example. And then there is a lot of potential doing better reporting, because I believe we generate a lot of data for test automation, or from test automation, and we don't benefit or don't use this data. So I believe this is another opportunity how we could advance and improve our test automation. So let me summarize, and sorry for that I now speeding up, because I thought I have more time and I wanted to spend more time on explaining the ideas. But if this is not the case, then I'll summarize now. So as I said, testing is changing, and we know that a next era is coming. We could discuss whether this will be just another complementary approach, or it will replace some old approaches. I believe that autonomous testing is the next era or next big thing. And there are a couple of ways how we could do it. One is to build our own bots, or just advancing our existing test automation. And with that, I would like to thank you all, and hopefully I don't overrun it so much.
No, that's it's not so much. So
Okay.
we just wanted to have some minutes for the questions as well, because we have two questions popping in. Thank you, Marcel. That's very intuitive and very instructive as well for our testing community. We'll take the first question. If autonomous testing doesn't need people to test, does it mean that autonomous testing will replace manual testing? So I guess you already anticipated this question from the start, so I'll let you explore that.
Yeah, I think that's. I feel like 20 years ago, when I was starting my career in software testing, and people were discussing whether and how many people we could fire when we only buy test automation tool. So that's the same. I feel like that I heard that question and that story already. So I don't believe this will replace us. It might replace the people. This idea could replace the people only if they will not use it, because there will be some quicker, better testers, because they could cover more, they could do it quickly, they could be better. So I believe that tooling is important, but we need to use it wisely. It's not about replacing humans, it's just improving the ability what we could what we could deliver.
Yes. So it's as well upskilling of the testers that will be required to operate the tools and so on to create the models and generation of the test cases.
Yeah, and I believe
So
this is also about the simplification of that. Like, we don't need to do so much heavy coding anymore.
right.
If these tools will help us, so it's the upskilling might not be so complicated anymore, or we need to focus on different skills. And maybe coding is not the next thing. But maybe if you would ask me 5 years ago, I would recommend that each and every tester should be able to program at least in one language. Now I'm not so sure. I still believe that principles are important and useful, but maybe not because of we need to automate in the future. Nowadays, yes, definitely we need to have that skills, but a lot of things are changing. So
Sure. I get your point with code test automation and so on. Things are really already changing the landscape of testing. So we have one question from the testing community. Do you think that AI generated test cases to test AI generated code is a good idea?
yes. And now we can discuss the details, but in short, yes. Of course, you need to keep some transparency about that. You need to be able to dig into detail and understand what happened there. But I believe this generation, I don't know. Now I'm working on one prototype and I call it BDD Copilot. Hopefully no one else will steal the idea. So you write the BDD code, the Gherkin code, and you provide this code together with HTML, and you are getting executable low-level code from the generative model.
Yes.
And I believe this could be pretty nice open source. Maybe that will be my next topic for the talk for the next year. I just need to prototype it. But that's something what you could do nowadays, and there are some tools who already implement it. The only tricky part of it is that the security and maybe cost and performance of that approach. But this will be solved in 6 months or so.
Sure. Yeah. We'll take one more question. So, this one. Are self-healing technologies part of autonomous testing?
I would say yes, but again, it depends, because when we are talking about self-healing, a lot of people talk about the locators. And in some cases, I believe that self-healing could be applied also for test data. No one is talking about that.
Could. Yeah. But, no one is talking about the test data. Everyone's focused on the locators. Yeah, true.
Yeah. So for me, yes, but I think even self-healing is not. Will develop a bit, because nowadays it's pretty. I would call it hard-coded AI or hard-coded machine learning, but this could also change in a future. So if we are talking about self-healing, then short answer to the question is yes, it should be part of the autonomous testing. But again, there need to be some transparency, there need to be some setup, and you should be able to first agree to generate the new locators. And second, the tool should be able to provide efficiently the list of the new locators which were used. So you might decide whether you want to change that or not. Or you might say, I believe the tool because I saw it already 100 times and it's good enough for me. But there need to be some feature which properly support the self-healing. So,
all right.
In short, yes.
So, yes. Okay. Thank you for your answer. Rapidly, we'll take one last question that just popped up from Stefan. So, is it possible to have bots for tests that go through a graphical interface and not directly through the database, or is it mainly intended for code-based testing?
I think I'm not sure whether I understood the question properly, but what I was showing on that my demo, this navigate through the application, and other bot is processing that DOM, the document object model. So we are learning how to interact with the app based on that standard HTML. But we could build the similar tool by recognizing the UI elements. And I was mentioning GASQ UI as one of the idea on my list. So you could, instead of using Playwright, where we are using the DOM and locators, you could use that visual recognition. Again, the question is how quickly we could do so, because you need to process all the data, you need to train the model to be able to recognize the elements and so on. And I think it's doable, it's feasible, but I have no experience to give you proper answer whether it wouldn't be too slow or how stable it'll be, and so. But again, in short, yes, but there might be some details and specifics which need to be explored.
Context might apply. Yeah. All right. So that marks the end of the questions that we've received so far. Thank you for your answers, Marcel. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience in this new field. And I'm looking forward for this field to develop because I'm an automation tester. I'm looking forward for using this technology in the future. Thank you a lot, Marcel. Looking forward to your presentation next year then.
Thank you very much for having me. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me via LinkedIn or upvote my talk. Maybe I will get some good score.
Sure. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.